Welcome, coaches, to this deep dive. Today we're going to be zeroing in on techniques and training for those long and triple jumpers out there. We're breaking down, a pretty comprehensive article titled "The Horizontal Jumps," and we're going to be pulling out those golden nuggets of knowledge that you guys can, use right away on the track.
Absolutely. We want to give you the tools to take your athletes to the next level, really bridge that gap between the theory and practice.
So let's get right into it. The article really stresses the importance of that approach run for both long and triple jump. Why is that?
Well, think of it this way. The approach run, it's like setting the stage for a grand performance. It's really where the magic happens, right?
Yep.
Over 90% of a jumper's success is going to hinge on them nailing that approach. It's where they build the velocity, the power, the direction, everything they need for a successful jump.
Wow, that's a huge percentage. It sounds like neglecting the approach run would be a major coaching oversight.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And that's where you can, as a coach, make the biggest impact. Now, while both long and triple jump are going to utilize that approach run, the long jump is actually considered simpler, technically. The article kind of breaks it down into these four key elements: the approach, the last two strides, the takeoff, and then that interaction leading into the landing.
Okay, so let's kind of unpack each of these. Starting with the approach, how does the long jump approach differ from standard sprinting technique?
It's all about finding that balance between speed and control. With the long jump approach, we're aiming for, a gradual acceleration, a consistent stride pattern. So instead of raw speed, we're really talking about controllable velocity. That's that maximum speed the athlete can maintain while still executing a technically sound takeoff.
So it's not about them just like hitting top speed, prematurely. It's more about finding that sweet spot where speed and technique kind of work together.
Yeah, it's about harnessing that speed and directing it into a powerful jump. Now, those last two strides before takeoff, those are crucial. The article highlights this long, short rhythm. Can you picture that, kind of what that looks like?
Yeah, I'm envisioning the athlete extending that penultimate stride, almost like they're gathering themselves for that explosion to come.
That's a great visualization. Essentially, they're lowering their center of mass. They're loading up like a coiled spring. The article calls this the swing leg squat, and it's really vital for that optimal energy transfer into the takeoff. Then that last stride is shorter as they rise up to launch themselves forward. And a common mistake here, a coaching pitfall, is overreaching on that last stride.
Yeah. So what are the consequences of that overreaching, and how can we help athletes avoid doing that?
So picture this. The athlete's reaching out too far with that takeoff foot. And essentially, it's like slamming on the brakes, before they've even left the ground. They're losing valuable distance before they even get airborne. So you want to watch for that, during training and correct it immediately. Encourage them to focus on that powerful upward and outward propulsion instead of just reaching.
Got it. So now they're launching themselves into the air.
Yeah.
What about their foot placement as they take off?
So foot placement is critical. They should be planting their foot flat, slightly in front of their body, almost like a pawing motion. This activates the muscles, creates a pre-tension that primes them for that powerful launch.
And this all ties into that concept of jumping, like out rather than just up.
Absolutely. It's about emphasizing that horizontal distance. You want to guide your athletes to focus on that outward trajectory. Picture them aiming for a point far out in front of them, not simply trying to jump high.
Makes sense. So we've got this powerful takeoff there. They're soaring through the air. Now what? How do they manage that forward rotation and prepare for the landing?
Well, that's where things get really interesting. The article goes into these three primary techniques to counteract that rotation: the hitch kick, the hang, and the sail.
I've always loved the visual of the hitch kick. It's almost like the athlete is running in midair.
It's a dynamic technique, right? They cycle their legs and arms, almost mimicking that running motion to maintain that upright position. Now, the hang technique involves stretching out the body, creating this long lever to slow down rotation and prepare for landing. So it's more extended, controlled movement. And then we have the sail, which is the simplest, but, the least effective. You see this a lot with beginners.
So as they progress, we want to see them kind of mastering that hitch kick or the hang for a more efficient flight phase.
Exactly. Those techniques are going to help them maintain that better control and minimize distance loss, when they land. Now, let's shift gears from technique to training. The article really hits on the importance of developing that jumping power alongside that sprinting speed.
And that's where plyometrics come in.
Right, absolutely.
Yeah.
Plyometric training, it's really like the secret weapon for long jumpers. It's all about combining that endurance, coordination, strength training. It's about creating those explosive reactive movements that are essential for a powerful jump.
Can you give us some more detail on how coaches can incorporate plyometrics into their training? The article mentions these long jumping and short jumping methods. What's the difference there?
So think of the long jumping plyometrics as building that foundation, right? It's those exercises like high skips, bounding, gallops. They're improving their conditioning and endurance, the building blocks for those explosive movements. Short jumping plyometrics, on the other hand, these are all about maximizing power. Think, box jumps, hurdle jumps, even just squat jumps from a half squat position.
Oh, okay.
These are your power moves.
That's incredibly helpful for coaches who, want to create these well-rounded programs. Are there any other key training elements that we should touch on?
Of course. We can't forget strength training, right? Those squats, cleans, snatches, medicine ball work. All those are essential for building that overall strength and power that you need for a successful long jump.
Okay, so we've got plyometrics and strength training as kind of these key elements for long jumpers. Now, the article also provides a sample training program broken down into early, in-season, and competitive phases. I think that's going to be incredibly helpful for our listeners.
It's a fantastic resource. It outlines those specific workouts, drills for each phase, so you can really tailor that training regimen based on, the time of year and your athlete's goals.
Fantastic. Okay, coaches, we've kind of laid the groundwork for long jump technique and training. Now let's move on to the triple jump. The article describes it as this continuous movement sequence, almost like a dance where each phase influences the next.
Exactly. It's a beautiful blend of speed, power, and coordination. These athletes need a unique mix of sprinting and jumping ability, powerful muscles, excellent motor skills to really master this event.
So let's break it down, starting with the approach and takeoff. How do these differ from the long jump?
Well, the triple jump approach run is going to be longer, typically, giving them more time to build up that speed. We're talking 30 to 40 meters, allowing them to reach near full velocity. And the takeoff, this is all about maintaining that horizontal momentum. Unlike the long jump, where you're aiming for that higher angle, in the triple jump, the takeoff angle is lower, usually under 16 degrees.
So they're really focusing on minimizing any loss of speed during that takeoff. It's almost like they're skimming across the surface.
You got it. It's all about that smooth, efficient transfer of energy from that approach run into that first phase, the hop.
Okay, so they've launched themselves into that first phase, the hop.
Yeah.
What should coaches be looking for here?
Yeah, so the hop, this is all about that forward momentum. It's almost like they're running off the board, maintaining that low trajectory and really resisting that urge to jump too high. That's a common mistake, sacrificing that forward momentum for unnecessary height.
It's like extending that feeling of the approach run, but into the air.
Exactly. And as they land, the focus shifts to minimizing braking, They should land slightly on the heel, almost like a rolling action. This helps preserve that speed and minimizes the impact on their joints, which reduces the risk of injury.
Okay. Now comes that step phase.
Yeah.
And the article acknowledges this as the most challenging part of the triple jump. Why is that?
It's that transition. The athlete has to shift gears from a supported landing to generating another powerful jump. They need incredible balance, core strength, coordination to really pull it off effectively.
It sounds like a real test of athleticism. The article mentions two main methods for executing this step. Can you talk about those a little bit?
Yeah, so one method focuses on maintaining that upright body position with a 90-degree leg angle. So think of that as more of a traditional jumping motion. The other involves a slightly stooped posture with the lower leg extended. This approach really emphasizes using momentum and a swinging motion to propel the athlete forward.
So there's some room for individual variation there,
Yeah.
Based on the athlete's strengths and what feels good to them.
Absolutely. It's all about finding what works best for each athlete while ensuring they're minimizing that forward rotation and really setting themselves up for that powerful final jump.
Okay. So that brings us to the grand finale, the jump phase. What are the key points here?
So this is where they finally want to maximize that vertical component. They've lost some of that horizontal velocity throughout the hop and the step. So now it's all about, getting as much height as possible to compensate, launching themselves upward and outward for that final push towards the sandpit.
And What about those in-air techniques for the jump phase?
Mm.
Are they similar to the long jump?
The hang and the float are going to be the go-to for most triple jumpers. The hang, that mirrors that technique we talked about in the long jump,
That
while the float involves a shorter, more compact movement. Again, the best choice is going to depend on the athlete.
Okay. Now, I found this next concept in the article really fascinating. They talk about phase ratios.
Mm.
Can you unpack that a little bit for listeners?
So phase ratios analyze the distances of the hop, the step, and the jump as a percentage of that total jump distance. It's almost like a fingerprint, of the athlete's jump,
Hmm.
revealing their strengths, their weaknesses, and how they're distributing effort, throughout the jump.
So there's no one-size-fits-all kind of ideal ratio there.
No, it varies depending on the athlete, their speed, their strength, their technique, even their experience level. What's interesting is that the article highlights how those optimal ratios can change as the athlete develops.
Oh, wow, that's interesting. So what works for them at one stage might not be ideal as they
Right.
progress, right?
Exactly.
Okay, so let's talk about some training specifically for the triple jump. Where should coaches start?
Drills. Drills are the foundation, right? These drills help the athletes develop those specific skills, get the overall feel for the triple jump,
Right.
allowing them to isolate and practice each component. Some of the most effective drills include that standing triple jump, hurdle hopping, split squats, and bench drills.
Okay, great examples. And the article also mentions those bounding exercises, right?
Yes, bounding, fantastic for developing control and strength. Coaches can incorporate hopping, stepping, hop-to-step variations, help those athletes build those specific muscles and movement patterns that are crucial.
It's all about building that mind-body connection, right?
Yeah. Absolutely. And while technique is key, the article emphasizes that athletes should also develop their own rhythm and that kinesthetic awareness.
Yeah, it's not just about, memorizing movements. It's about understanding how their body moves through space.
Exactly.
And of course, we can't forget about strength training in this as well.
Absolutely. Exercises like knee extensions, leg curls, squats, toe raises, these all help build the strength needed for all three phases of the jump.
So we've got drills, we've got bounding, and then we've got that strength training, a lot to work with there. And like the long jump, the article also provides a sample training program for triple jumpers. Is that correct?
Yes, it outlines specific workouts and strategies for early season, in season, and those performance development phases. A fantastic resource for coaches looking for, that guidance.
This is just a wealth of information that coaches can, apply right away with their athletes. But before we wrap up, I want to kind of circle back to something you mentioned earlier, that mental game. The article highlights the importance of that strong mental approach, especially in an event that's as technically demanding as the triple jump.
Absolutely. The triple jump isn't just a physical test, it's a mental one. These athletes need to be able to visualize their jumps, stay positive, and manage those nerves, especially under pressure.
Visualization, something we hear about a lot.
Yeah.
How can athletes use that to their advantage?
Well, visualization, it's like creating a mental blueprint for success. Encourage your athletes to close their eyes, imagine themselves executing that perfect jump, feel the rhythm, the power, those smooth transitions. This mental rehearsal helps build confidence and it actually improves performance.
So how about that self-talk? How can we guide our athletes towards that more positive inner dialogue?
So self-talk can really make or break an athlete. Negative self-talk is going to breed doubt, anxiety, while positive self-talk builds confidence and resilience. Teach your athletes to become aware of that inner voice. Help them replace those negative thoughts. I can't do this, with positive affirmations. I'm strong, I'm prepared, I can nail this jump.
And then there's, managing those pre-competition nerves. What are some effective strategies that athletes can use to stay calm and focused?
Deep breathing exercises can be a game changer. Encourage your athletes to practice those deep, slow breaths to really calm those nerves and center their focus. Relaxation techniques like progressive muscle relaxation, these can also help reduce tension. And of course, that positive self-talk is key here as well.
It sounds like equipping these athletes with these mental tools is just as important as perfecting that physical technique.
Yeah, it's all part of the package, the mental game. It's a crucial piece of the puzzle. It can really make the difference between a good athlete and a great one.
Are there any specific drills that coaches can use to really work on these elements of the approach run.
Yeah, one of the simplest but most effective drills is simply practicing that approach run without actually jumping. This allows them to zero in on their acceleration, their stride pattern, that rhythm, without the distraction of the jumps.
Mm.
Coaches can use markers, pones, set up specific checkpoints along the way. This helps them really visualize, am I hitting those targets consistently?
That's great. And I imagine incorporating, variations into that approach run training can also be really beneficial.
Oh, absolutely. Encourage them to practice, starting from different distances, running at different speeds. This helps them develop that adaptability, that ability to adjust their approach, based on the conditions, their goals.
That makes sense. Now let's talk about the transitions. Moving from hop to step to jump seamlessly. That's crucial for maximizing that distance.
Yeah, those transitions, that's where a lot of athletes, leave potential on the table. The goal is to maintain that momentum, minimize any loss of energy or speed as they flow through, each phase.
So what are some coaching points to focus on during these transitions?
One key is a quick and active foot plant during each landing. They should land with a slight, pawing action, almost like they're using those ankle and foot muscles to pull themselves forward.
So it's almost like they're using that landing to kind of catapult them into the next phase.
Exactly. And maintaining an upright posture, throughout those transitions, that's crucial. Any forward lean, hunching of the back, that disrupts their balance, reduces efficiency. So, chest up, shoulders back, core engaged.
So we're looking for a tall, powerful posture as they kind of flow through those phases.
Exactly.
Okay. Are there any specific drills that can help athletes kind of improve those transitions?
Yeah, the hop to step exercise is a great one. This involves hopping twice on one leg and then transitioning to a step onto the opposite leg. This helps them develop that feel for the rhythm and coordination.
Okay, and I think we talked about the standing triple jump a little bit earlier. And I remember the article also mentioned the bench drill as well.
The bench drill, absolutely. Having them hop or step over a series of low benches, this helps them practice their footwork, timing, balance, a simple but effective way to improve those movements.
Okay, coaches, you got a toolkit of drills to work with. Now let's talk about landing technique. This is crucial for maximizing distance and also preventing injury. What should coaches be emphasizing here?
So the ideal landing involves, absorbing the impact while maintaining that forward momentum. It's a bit of a balancing act. They need to land softly enough to protect their joints, but maintain enough rigidity to prevent collapsing and losing speed.
It's almost like a controlled crumple zone.
Exactly. Encourage a slight bend in the knees to absorb that shock. Landing with the feet, shoulder width apart for stability. That center of gravity should be slightly ahead of their feet to maintain that motion. And watch out for hard heel strikes. Those can, really jar the joints, increase that risk of injury. Emphasize that midfoot or forefoot strike to distribute the force more evenly.
Okay. So those are some great tips. I'm sure those drills mentioned in the article, like the depth jumps, box landings, sandpit landings, those are all excellent ways to practice those landing techniques.
Oh, absolutely. Those drills are invaluable.
Okay. Now, I want to circle back to something we talked about earlier, those hop, step, and jump ratios.
Yeah.
These can really provide valuable insight into the athlete's performance.
Yeah, these ratios, they're like a performance fingerprint. They show us the percentage contribution of each phase to that total jump distance, revealing how the athlete is distributing effort, throughout the jump.
So they can highlight strengths and weaknesses, right?
Exactly. For example, elite male triple jumpers, they often have a hop dominant ratio, meaning their hop phase contributes the largest percentage. Elite females, on the other hand, they tend to have a more balanced ratio.
Okay. Interesting. And the article stressed that there's no one-size-fits-all ideal ratio, right?
Exactly. Individual factors like speed, strength, technique, experience all play a role. Coaches should use these ratios as a guide for individualizing training. If you see an athlete with a weaker step phase, you can focus on exercises and drills, to target that area.
So it's about tailoring that training to their needs.
Absolutely.
Okay, great. So we've talked about technique, training, mental aspects, performance analysis. Anything else that we should touch on before we wrap up?
Let's talk about rhythm. A consistent fluid rhythm, that's crucial for really optimizing performance.
It's almost like a dance, right? Where each movement flows seamlessly into the next.
Exactly. And developing that rhythm, that starts with the approach run. They should aim for that smooth, consistent acceleration we talked about, each stride kind of leading into the next naturally. And that rhythm should carry through the hop, the step, and the jump, creating that continuous flow.
So what are some tips for developing that innate sense of rhythm?
Encouraging them to count their strides during that approach can help, develop that consistent pace, internalize the rhythm. You can also incorporate music, or a metronome into training. This helps them connect to a specific beat.
Oh, that's a good idea.
Yeah, find those creative ways.
So we've talked about rhythm. Now let's talk about speed. I mean, this is really the foundation of the entire event.
It's the engine that drives those jumps. The faster they can run, the more momentum they're going to have going into each phase. So developing speed, that should be a primary focus of the training.
It's not enough to just be a good jumper. You need that speed to fuel those jumps.
Absolutely. Incorporate those traditional sprint workouts, intervals, repeats, into their training regimen. And don't forget those drills that focus on acceleration, top speed mechanics.
And remember, each athlete's different. Some might need to focus on improving their acceleration. Others might need to, work on maintaining that top speed.
Exactly. Tailor that training to the individual.
Okay, so we've talked about speed. Now let's talk about power. That explosive power that really launches them into the air and helps them achieve those impressive distances.
Explosive power, that's like the secret sauce. It's the combination of strength and speed. And this is what sets those, elite jumpers apart. Plyometrics, those are key here. Box jumps, depth jumps, bounding drills. All of those train those muscles to react quickly and generate that force.
And of course, strength training to build that foundation.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Squats, cleans, snatches, these build that strength and power in the legs, the core. And remember to target those movements specific to the triple jump. So, single leg hops and bounds for the hop and step, double leg jumps, medicine ball throws to mimic the jump phase.
So it's all about working those muscles in a way that directly translates to the demands of the event.
Exactly.
Okay. Now, let's talk about something that's often overlooked, flexibility and mobility. These are kind of the unsung heroes, of triple jump performance.
Yeah, flexibility. That's all about the range of motion around a joint, allowing for those full fluid movements. Think about, hip flexibility for a powerful leg extension during takeoff, ankle flexibility for those smooth landings. Mobility, that encompasses flexibility, but it also includes the ability to move freely and easily through that range of motion. It's about, removing those restrictions, creating that fluidity throughout the entire jump.
And without good mobility, athletes might feel stiff, they might feel restricted. It could hinder their performance and increase their risk of injury.
Absolutely.
So what can coaches do to really address those areas?
Incorporate a variety of exercises, into their training. Static stretching, dynamic stretching, foam rolling. These are all great for improving flexibility. And for mobility, leg swings, hip circles, ankle mobility drills. These can make a huge difference.
And again, it's about addressing those individual needs, right? If an athlete has, tight hamstrings, for example, you might need to focus on some targeted stretches to improve their hip extension.
Exactly.
Great. Okay. So we've got flexibility, mobility covered. Let's talk about strength training again. I mean, this is really the foundation for everything.
Oh, absolutely. Strength training builds those muscles. That foundation provides the power, the stability, everything you need. It's building that strong base that can handle the demands of this high impact event.
So what are some key exercises that coaches should be incorporating?
Your big ones are going to be your squats, deadlifts, lunges, and presses. Squats are going to build that strength in the quads. Hamstrings, glutes. Deadlifts are going to work that posterior chain. So, those hamstrings, glutes, lower back. Lunges are great for that single leg strength and stability, mimicking those single leg landings. And presses, of course, are going to target that upper body, which is important for maintaining balance, generating momentum.
It's a full body approach.
Exactly.
And remember, proper form and technique are crucial here.
Oh, yeah. Start with lighter weights. Focus on mastering those movements before you increase that load.
Safety first. Now, I know coaches are always looking for ways to kind of challenge their athletes, pushing them further. The article mentioned some advanced drills. Can you give us some examples?
Yeah, advanced drills, these are all about taking those basic movements and adding layers of complexity to really refine that technique, push those limits. The hurdle hop, for example, involves hopping over a series of low hurdles while maintaining a consistent rhythm, a high knee drive. It's fantastic for building that power and coordination.
Okay. And the bounding drill, that sounds like a good challenge as well.
Yeah, bounding drills, these are going to incorporate a series of hops and bounds with varying distances, intensities, really develops that speed, power, rhythm all in one. And then, you have the weighted triple jump
Mhm.
where they perform the jump while wearing a weighted vest or holding light weights. Adding that resistance forces them to generate more force.
Okay, those are excellent ways to really take that training to the next level. But remember, coaches, introduce those gradually as the athlete progresses. And always prioritize safety.
Absolutely. It's about pushing those limits but safely and effectively.
Now, let's talk about something that can be incredibly frustrating for both coaches and athletes. Um, Plateaus. Those moments when progress kind of stalls despite that consistent training.
Plateaus, yeah, it's like hitting a wall. It can be really disheartening for those athletes when they're putting in the work but not seeing the results.
Yeah. So why do these plateaus happen?
Well, there are a few potential culprits. Sometimes it's a technical issue. Maybe they've developed a flaw in their technique that's limiting their progress. Other times it's a physical limitation. Maybe they need to improve their strength, power, or flexibility to break through. And then sometimes it's a mental block, a lack of confidence, motivation.
So how can coaches help their athletes overcome those?
Well, first, take a look at that technique, analyze their movements, identify any areas that need improvement. Video analysis can be really helpful for this.
Mhm.
It can often reveal those subtle errors that are hard to spot. And next, vary the training routine. Doing the same workouts week after week, that can lead to, boredom and stagnation. So, challenge them with new drills, exercises, training methods, keep things fresh.
Shake things up a little bit.
Absolutely. And remember, rest and recovery, that's just as important as the training itself. Sometimes the best thing an athlete can do is take a break.
Yeah, overtraining can be just as detrimental as undertraining.
Exactly. And finally, address any underlying mental or emotional issues that might be contributing. If you sense they're lacking confidence, motivation, it's crucial to address those things. A strong mind-body connection, that's essential.
This has been an incredible deep dive into the world of the long and triple jump. We've explored the technique, the training, mental strategies. We've even gotten a glimpse into the future.
We hope you found this information valuable, and we encourage you to, take these principles, apply them, experiment, adapt, never stop learning.
Coaches, thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Best of luck as you continue to inspire and guide your athletes towards achieving their dreams.